And so we can't really get to gender partnership until women do our own work on this journey, men do their work on this journey, and then together we walk arm in arm on the journey together. So I'm here to say I am officially a work in progress. This is a great privilege to be with you on this journey, and I think we can all continue to be deeply curious about what is it we don't know about our own blind spots, about our own lack of compassion. So I want to give you a few things to think about. I'm not sure, where do I point this to get that to change? Anybody heads up? Point it towards you? Okay, awesome, there we go. All right, so some things that we've learned along the way on this journey is that, no one can escape unconscious bias. It's built into our DNA, it's built into our brain channels, it's built into everything in our society. So we can't escape that we are. All there is to wonder is, how much more am I? And how much more can I discover and see? We also learned that the kind of deep tissue work that's required to end any of the isms, sexism, racism, classism, homophobia, etc., has to be a combination. I have a bias towards immersion work because I've seen the most progress in the fastest amount of time when, particularly in the area of men are given immersion experiences where they actually have to dwell in the discomfort and the unknowing of exactly how it is in a woman's world and what it's like to have death by 1,000 paper cuts. But we also have to have drip feed because you can't just have a one-time event, one and done. You have to have, education over time. You have to have practice over time. You actually have to practice in the real world with real business stuff. You have to be at work on teams, to the things Jeff was saying earlier this morning. And then this whole thing about keeping it real, fostering truth-telling, creating psychologically safe places to have the real deal conversation. And I'll tell you, of the men executives that we work with, the first thing we encourage them to do is to get what we fondly call a kitchen cabinet. Get a group of women truth tellers that are kind of a diagonal slice across the organization that will actually tell you what's really going on. Because the higher you up are on the food chain, the less you know about what's really going on and what the conversation is. So we see that as a critical success factor. The whole area of reciprocity. I think we don't know how deeply women still have work to do with ourselves, work to do with each other. And it's only when this is in a context of reciprocity and gender partnership that we're actually going to get men interested in leaning in. Because the thousands of men I talk to, one of the unspoken conversations is, it is a net-sum game, and why should I compete against 100% of the people in the room when I only have to compete against 50% now? That does not make sense to me. So we have to shift the fundamental paradigm that it's a partnership model and that we're all in it together. We haven't even got to what 3 could be. 3 is, greater than the sum of the parts. 3 is the what becomes possible when men and women are operating with all full authenticity, all freedom. So I'm excited about this possibility, and this conference is the beginning for me of the real possibility of 1 + 1 = 3, particularly in the corporate sector. So I'll also say that the 3 dimensions of this are the work that needs to be done with women, women empowering women with and for each other. I just spent some time last week with C-level women across industries in New York City having a conversation about women for women, moving from rivalry to advocacy. And I got to tell you that before we had that conversation, they weren't that way. They knew women that were that way, but they weren't that way. I'll never forget, I launched my book at Harvard, and I was able to present it to about 120 of very, very highly achieved women across sectors, an international group and so forth. And I said, look, before I say anything about my book, let me just do a quick survey. How many of you in the room have ever been undermined by another woman in your career? Like this. Every single woman raised their hand. I said, okay, wow, that's amazing. I said, okay, Raise your hand if you've ever undermined another woman. 0. No hands. To which I said, forget my book, we need to find those bitches. Let's get out of here. So we still have plenty of work to do. Obviously, engaging men as allies is what the panel's about, and then identifying and transforming institutional blind spots and systemic barriers. This is another area that I know we're going to get into with our panelists that's rich with opportunity to see what are all the little discrete, nuanced ways that we institutionalize sexism. It couldn't be 2016 and still look the way it looks if we didn't have institutionalized sustainable practices around that. So we got to get after those. Now, the 4 practices. Compassion, probably the hardest, but the most important for all of us to practice. Certainly the cornerstone of all great religions in the world is this practice of compassion. Curiosity, literally being curious about what do you see that I don't see, and gee, I had no idea that's how that felt for you, or oh, wow, you mean when I do this, that leaves another woman with an unintended consequence? Oh, wow, I had no idea. And then, of course, collaboration. So we need everybody practicing the 4 C's. All right, so now we're fortunate today to be joined by 3 bona fide male allies. We had them stamped and looked at their IDs, and it says, I'm a male ally. Before I introduce them, though, there's